Unless you've been living under a rock, you'll know that ambient music is really having a moment right now in the lo-fi space, as well as going relatively viral and mainstream with artists like One Heart and Ambient absolutely killing it right now on TikTok, Instagram and streaming platforms. I had a go at writing an ambient track of my own. This is more of a light guitar ambient track, akin to the kind of thing you might hear coming from Adam Dodson compared to One Heart or Ambient. I still think it came out pretty cool. So I want to jump into FL Studio and break down this track with you guys. Let's get to it. Okay, so here I am in the project file, and as you can see, there isn't actually too much going on. I think that's something that comes with the territory. Writing ambient or laid back stuff can be really easy to overcomplicate things and feel like you just need to keep adding things. A big part of the ambient space is the space and making sure that the track has space. And that's one of the things that I was struggling with when writing this track, but it's actually something that I think makes this type of music so amazing. And before we jump into the track, I would like to say I actually started this track on a different video where I was making a beat from scratch. Pop a link up here if you want to actually watch me make what it ended up being the core aspect of this track. Now I'm going to talk through all the pieces of it and the arrangement and what I was thinking when I was writing the track. So as you can see, the song starts with just a drone, nothing else. I'm using the Labs Azure piano as my drone, and that's just holding a C and a G. So that's the 1 and the 5 of our scale. We're in a C major for essentially the whole track. There is a couple of additional bits that come in to keep adding kind of different elements to the ambience of the track, and we'll talk about those when they come up. For now, this is how the drone sounds at the very start of the track. And I've also got a automation that slowly brings the drone into the track. Super simple, not too much going on there. I do also have a EQ that is just rolling out everything above sort of 500 Hertz with a very tiny boost to that kind of 200 region. And that's just to give me a really nice warm sound from that drone. After the drone's played for a little while, we start to introduce our first melodic element, and that is a guitar. So I've got a synthetic guitar here, and this is the chill guitar from Flex, which is a sound that I use quite a lot in my beats, and definitely when I'm adding a synthetic guitar. And on this guitar, I've got an EQ focusing in on those middle frequencies. I've got a Valhalla Super Massive that I think is on a tweaked version of this long reverb preset that I made a little while ago. I've got another EQ removing some of that washout and the reverb. And then finally, I've got a limiter, and I just used this limiter to automate the gain rather than automating the volume knob on my mixer. And then you'll hear there, before that guitar cuts off, start introducing some extra notes, some little stabs with the drone sound. So you get these Fs. Just to add a really interesting character to keep things moving. On top of that ARP, we have another guitar ARP, and this is the same sound, playing a different ARP and with slightly different processing. So this one here has a similar EQ, a higher mix on the reverb and a slightly different settings. And then finally, it's got, again, another reverb. So I think I probably just copied the settings over and then tweaked that reverb ever so slightly. Another automation, so this actually decreases in volume. So you've got that first one which increases in volume, and this one which at the same time is washing out. And And then at that point, everything cuts out. And what's interesting about this guitar arp, if we look at the pan, I've got it to move between the headphones as it plays. It's a really nice touch with ambient stuff, is to really think about where the sounds are sitting and keep things moving, because you're not adding too much, to just keep the sounds moving, keep things interesting. And then everything breaks down to just that drone after that point. So that's kind of our intro. For one bar. And then we introduce the main element of the track, which is this guitar pattern. And you'll see that I've built one long pattern. I didn't want this to just be a 4-bar loop, essentially. I wanted to keep building as I was going, to keep it interesting, keep it fresh. So I was thinking I want to pick some core notes for the pattern and stick to those. So at this point, we introduce the guitar, then we introduce our piano chord. Play that through and we'll get an idea of how that sounds. So I really tried to follow the guitar pattern with the piano. I wanted the guitar to be the focus, and then that piano is just really adding a ton of warmth and giving that first kind of real moment in the song when those chords come in. So for processing on those, I've got an EQ, the same EQ on that guitar, a Solaris this time, which is adding a nice bit of big shimmer to the guitar sound, a large reverb, quite a wet signal, and then a little bit of delay, so adding a nice shimmer to the sound. And then again, that same EQ, this time we're just raising some of those mid to low frequencies to give it a little bit more body and a little bit more warmth. For the piano, I've got a loud max, that's just turning it up because this VST is sometimes a little bit too quiet. I've got an EQ, just rolling off some of those lows, those mid lows, give space for that guitar, so that's the same sort of spot to where we boosted that guitar. And then I've got a limiter with a side chain on to the bass. Now the next element that I introduced here was a pad sound, and this is actually the soft piano from Labs. And what I've done with this is added a 100% wet signal from Solaris with a nice big reverb, so it becomes this sound. I've EQ'd it out, got rid of anything below 500 Hertz to give it this weird kind of pad sound. So that comes in with our pianos. And then I've got a reversed piano shot there as our sort of transition. And as you can hear, that's just got a bit of EQ, a decent bit of delay, and then a reverb to use that as a transition. We also get the bass come in. This is the sub bass from Labs, one of my favorite synthetic bass sounds. I use this all the time, and it's just got an EQ to roll off all of those mids. I really wanted a nice subby sound from this bass. And there's that pad. And then at this point, the main guitar slows down and we just get some like nice kind of chord following notes. And we introduce our two guitars from earlier to give us almost a break. But again, it's just like another moment in the track to breathe. And then here we move into a bridge section with just a slightly different piano chord progression. The bass continues. I followed that sort of idea that I had with the guitar to use much longer patterns and try and keep things interesting. I've done the same here with the bass. So I've got a second bass pattern that follows this second piano pattern. And then here we have a break from the drone. The drone comes back in here, but then we have a break from everything else before we come to the final section. In that final section, we have a copy of this ARP on a higher octave. And that just introduces like another really interesting dynamic to the sound. Is also something we've heard before. When that comes in, I also introduce this other pad sound, and this is a cheap brass pad sound from Citrus. On its own, this sounds like not what you'd expect from a ambient track like this. So I dropped an EQ on it to really thin that sound out. I then added tape cassette 2, and this is just adding like a nice bit of saturation to the sound. A big 80% wet reverb. And then finally another EQ, this time cutting out everything below 500, just getting those higher frequencies for our pad sound. And it almost sounds like a chorus or like a breath sound. So as you can also see, we've got our automations there doing a fair bit of work, fading things in, fading things out. Let's just listen to that little break there where we just get the drone. Again, it's kind of a callback to that earlier section. And then this build up with our guitars, our new pad, and we'll see how that sounds. Then you can hear that higher up kind of slowly fading in. We hear a new section on the main guitar, the bass and the chords. We've not heard this before. This really like simple little break, this section here, which just separates the sections really nicely, but keeps it super interesting. We've got our pad adding a nice bit of high end, and then here comes the guitar sounds. And then we get everything together for one final section. I'll just play you a little preview here. And that's how I'd go about writing a kind of uplifting ambient track. It's got like a really hopeful, emotional vibe to it. And I'm really happy with how this has come out. If you do want to hear more of this song, it is out now on all streaming platforms. I'm super grateful to the guys at Unbound. That is a music label that is run by the guys over at Purity Label. They've put together a ambient sleepy compilation, and this track is going to be featured as a part of that compilation. Head on over to streaming platforms. I'll put the link below to my track, and keep an eye out for the full compilation because it's going to be amazing, I'm sure. If you want to see me tackle any other sub-genres of the lo-fi space, I've really been enjoying playing with other styles like this. So drop a comment and let me know what other sub-genres of lo-fi you'd like me to have a crack at. I think that's everything for this week. See you in the next one.